Good morning. Welcome to the Earthwork Farm bee yard. Bees are intensely working as the main honey flow begins, and that is a term that is used to describe collectively many nectariferous plants yielding flower nectar to attract bees to pollinate their flowers and to ensure seed production for following years. It's a wonderful interactive thing, the bees and flowers, and it's an amazing thing to be involved with if you keep bees. So we have the good fortune of having a dear friend here, Sierra Bigham, to talk to us about flowers, medicinal properties, her life endeavor and her business and some of her products and philosophical perspectives on things. So I would like to introduce Sierra Bigham from Bare Earth Herbals.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure
You're welcome.
to be here.
So yeah, I know you're a busy woman, so it's especially nice that you could make time to do this. And
Thanks. Yeah, it's nice to have a break from the gardens for an afternoon.
from the weeds and the mosquitoes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're caught between the frying pan and the fire.
Yes.
The heat of the day and the mosquitoes in the evening when it's nice to work. So.
Yes.
So we were going to start by talking about some of the important honey-producing plants, and it also turns out that they have important medicinal qualities that are well worth mentioning. So
Yes.
would you like to show us some of these plants, Sierra? We
Sure.
have a few laid out on the table.
Yeah, you want to start with sumac?
Yeah, yep. You could see what a beautiful plant it is. Compound leaf with many leaflets on it. And this is a flower head on it. There could easily be 1,000 tiny florets on this. And the bees eagerly seek it, and the smell of that is in the air right now. It's a kind of a vitamin C smell, and it produces a lovely light-colored honey, and it has other desirable qualities for making teas, do I understand?
Yeah, usually we would do this as a cold steep tea because what we really want to get from these berries when they're ripe is the vitamin C content. They're super high in vitamin C and antioxidants, and those are easily destroyed with heat. So what we would want to do is take them fresh when they're ripe, or harvest them and dry them for later use, and then put the berries in a jar with water and just let it sit like overnight as a cold infusion. It's really tart. Some folks call it sumac-ade. It's kind of like a lemonade. If you add a little honey or maple syrup, it's nice.
Yeah, and when after the frosts, these berries or these seed heads turn a brilliant red.
They do.
They not?
Yeah, really bright red. And that's a good way to tell for sure that you don't have a poison sumac, because the poison sumac berries are white. So I get a lot of questions when I sell a tea with sumac in it, and everybody's always asking, oh, I thought that was poisonous. We have a lot more of this staghorn sumac up here than the poison sumac. But if you see one that has similar leaf shape and white berries, that would be poison sumac. And if it's not in berry form yet, you can tell the staghorn sumac has serrated leaves here, and the smooth sumac, or poison sumac, the poison sumac does not. It has smooth leaves. Yeah. And there's another sumac called smooth sumac that has red berries as well. But they're not fuzzy, they're smooth.
Oh.
Also safe. So just stay away from the white berries.
All right. I don't know if I've ever seen the poison sumac myself.
It's more common further south. Yeah. It grows in really wet places generally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I usually consider that when this opens up, and it just opened up today, it's the onset of the main summer honey flow. You better have your empty boxes on your bees then, because they're going to start doing some magical things. So the next major plant in the sequence would be
the basswood, or sometimes called linden tree.
Lobelia americana.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
The flowers are almost open. The buds are quite swollen. They should be open in just several days.
And this is one of the most heavily producing honey plants in this latitude. Basswoods, I have seen bees gain 60 or 70 pounds of weight in 1 week's time during a basswood flow, which is extraordinary in itself, but if you add to the fact that the bees had to gather nectar that was probably had 3 times as much water in it, so the bees maybe brought in 120 or 100 or 200 pounds of liquid and then evaporated it down to 18%.
One little bee at a time.
Yeah, one little bee at a time. Incidentally, a bee in its lifetime may gather like 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's in their 6-week lifetime in the summer. So, yeah. So anyway, the basswoods are probably a week away from opening, and beekeepers are always optimistic about the basswood honey flow. And what medicinal uses? Yeah, mucilaginous.
Yeah, it's in other words, slimy. So yeah, there's quite a bit of mucilage in this plant. It's in the leaves, even in the bark. If you strip the bark, it comes off in long strips, and it's kind of slimy on the inner bark. Really good for cordage making and basketry. The flowers here are what I use most for herbal remedies, and I like to make a tea with these, but do it like a long steep, because things where they have that mucilage, the longer you steep them for, the more you're going to get that out. So I like to harvest the flowers when they're open, so shortly here, and then this is actually all part of the flower. It kind of looks like a leaf here, but this is, you can see the leaves are very different shape. This is a modified leaf bract that is attached to the flower. So when we harvest, I harvest this whole thing and then dry it, and we'll do long steep teas with it, and they're really nice for folks who struggle with like irritable digestion, or even you can use it topically as a wash for irritated skin. It's really soothing, demulcent. And one of the really great properties of this plant is it's a wonderful anti-inflammatory. So I've often thought about, with the bees harvesting it, that might be a really nice thing for them, especially during this busy working season.
Yeah. Well, here's to it for basswood.
I recall you saying something about how they are protected from the rain, and so they can still harvest these in the rain. I thought that was neat.
Typically the branch would be like this, and this leaf, this one's been attacked by some kind of insect, and it's rolled up, or some fungus. So the flowers are protected from a light rain. So, and since they're decumbent, they hang down. The water runs off of them, so bees will sometimes gather honey from a basswood tree even during a light rain, which is pretty cool, because typically rain washes all the nectar out and pollen out of flowers, and then they have to start all over again the next day. So, yeah. How about that milkweed flower head?
Yeah. This is one of my favorite smells.
Yeah. If you haven't
so
ever
pretty.
smelled a milkweed flower, well, you haven't lived.
Yeah. It's like lilacs, but better.
Yeah, yeah. It too is a compound flower cluster, and it has a wonderful redolent smell, and it yields a great deal of nectar to bees, and of course is the main support system for butterflies, for the monarch butterfly, and it also produces a silk. The seeds are borne away on little parachutes that collectively create like a fluff with which you could make a pillow if you wanted.
Yes.
Collect enough of it.
I thought about it, but it takes a lot. I collected for a while when I was a kid, and I didn't get enough for a pillow.
No.
But you can eat them when they're young, before they mature into the fluff. You can cook them with a couple changes of water. I've done that a couple times.
Are there there's some medicinal use for them. I don't know. Remember what
Yeah,
it is?
so I mean, the flowers are edible. Some parts of the plant are edible with some cooking. But if you've ever broken one of the stems of the milkweed, you'll see this latex that kind of comes out of it, this white.
I have.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that is kind of caustic. So that's why we need to boil and even change the water with some parts of it when we cook it. It's pretty irritating to the skin. However, it could be really effective for taking something off the skin that you don't want there, like a mole.
Or a wart.
Or a
even.
wart, yeah, and I've seen it actually work on a wart. It kind of burns away the wart, so it's, kind of maybe like getting it frozen off at the doctor. A little painful, but very effective.
If you thought your nose was too big, could you treat your nose with it?
If you had a wart on your nose.
Okay, well, what else do we have in our bag of plants here?
Oh, good. Some comfrey, which is very prolific here.
Yes, yeah, we have a great colony of comfrey here. I don't think it's a main honey plant, but I see the bees are on it a lot, and especially bumblebees and butterflies like it. And it is well known as an herbal, valuable herb, is it not?
It is, yeah. It's another name for it is knitbone, and it is amazing for anything musculoskeletal. So for structural support, I love comfrey. I use it for sprains or strains or just general musculoskeletal issues, pain. Really good for healing up connective tissues. Yeah, and the skin. It's just wonderful all the way around, but not so good to do internally in large doses because it contains a pyrrolizidine alkaloid, which is more prevalent in its root than its leaves. But this is actually a hybridized variety, which is why it's spreading so well by root. It has developed that ability when it was hybridized so that it no longer produces viable seed. And it was hybridized to reduce the quantity of that alkaloid so that it would be more friendly for use.
Wow, I got a little history on the plant.
Yeah.
I bet that plant is impressed with what you know about it. It didn't even know about that itself, probably. What else you got? Clovers?
Yeah, we got some clovers, some red clover.
Yep, this is the time when the clovers come into bloom. The red and white clovers, both of which are honey producing, and they have their own healing uses too, do they not? Or the white not so much?
Yeah, the red more than the white. We don't use the white too much because it's very high in coumarin, so it could be dangerously blood thinning. The red contains some coumarins, but it's a nice amount of blood thinning that helps cleanse our blood and our lymphatic system. Can be really helpful for like high blood pressure. Tons of other properties too. Red clover is super high in minerals, so it's a really good nutritive. I imagine for the bees it's a really good source of nutrients. It's very high in B vitamins, magnesium, phosphorus, lots of things. It's also a really wonderful source of phytoestrogens, and they're all really protective phytoestrogens. So what it does when we consume red clover is it fills up our estrogen receptors with those really beneficial
quality
estrogens, that aren't feeling to cancers and things, and protects us from the xenoestrogens or environmental estrogens that I imagine are also affecting the bees, and it's in the soil and the water now. So
I've read studies that there's usually at least residues of at least 20 different pesticides in soil.
Wow.
In agricultural areas.
Wow.
In tiny amounts, but no one knows the effect of combining these, except that they know sometimes very tiny amounts of some present with another one can have really devastating effects. So there's a big poisonous cocktail out there in the soil.
Yeah.
So it's a hard time for honeybees because of that. That's one of the reasons. So, yeah. So
it's a good soil cleanser too. Really good nitrogen fixers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know anything about nitrogen fixers, it's worth knowing a little. They take atmospheric nitrogen, which is a very common gaseous element, and turn it into organic nitrogen that can be used by plants, and they have colonies of bacteria and live on nodules in their roots. So since nitrogen is such a limiting element in soil, nitrogen fixing plants are extremely valuable to all around growth, to the nutrient budget of plants.
Yeah, you've planted this as a cover crop, haven't you?
I'm always planting stuff to try to build the soil naturally. I put in some buckwheat last week, and
Nice.
it's really coming up. It's eager to grow.
Yes, even in this heat.
Sometimes you forget the miracle of a seed growing.
Oh, it's
You just
so,
put it in there in a little water, and you just expect it to grow, and oh my gosh, it has to risk its life every time, doesn't
yeah.
it?
And that discernment of
Yeah,
knowing
that
when,
discern. How does
yeah.
it know that it can going to make it? Is there going to be enough moisture? It must have some intuition, but
Oh,
a lot of times
definitely.
they fail. But
Yeah, when sometimes they lay dormant for hundreds of years.
yeah, I heard of a study at MSU where some plants germinated better after their seeds were 100 years old.
Wow,
Yeah, yeah.
incredible.
How about that bird's foot trefoil over there? There's some maybe
Yeah.
a less known plant is also a legume, a nitrogen fixer,
Yeah.
deep rooted, very persistent, a plant that can live on and expand. It can reproduce under its own shade like some plants cannot. Yeah. Yep. And it makes a wonderful hay, and it's a honey plant, and
Yeah, this isn't one I use too much. It's it's a little high in the coumarins for internal use. I've heard of using it for headaches, and seen it used in formulas that said they had good results. I have not tried it, but I really love looking at it. It's a very beautiful flower.
yeah, when it forms seeds, it forms. They look just like a foot of a turkey, only smaller, and each foot is loaded with tiny seeds. So we got one more there.
Yeah,
Oh, two more.
Yeah, a couple more. We got some St. John's wort, which is just coming into flower right now, and it's a really wonderful thing to harvest. If you can catch some in bloom, it's pretty easy to spot this time of year. I really love this plant with so many reasons. Just the smell of it alone and the look of it, but it has a really unique way of capturing sunlight.
Oh, the bloom smells sweet, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a really unique smell.
It's a gentle.
Very gentle, yeah. Yeah, so if you've ever noticed, like in the fall, the whole plant turns really bright red.
I guess. I had not recalled that, but
yeah, it's easy to spot. Unfortunately, that's past when it's harvestable, but the flowers are pretty easy to spot too.
it's a signal you missed
Yeah, exactly.
an opportunity.
But if you make a tincture or an infused oil with the flowers, it'll also turn red. And it's actually the way that this plant stores sunlight is different from other plants in that it keeps it in a different chemical form, so it's a lot more usable. Especially like for us, if we're consuming it, it has the same or similar effects on our body that sunlight does, as far as increasing serotonin in our brain and helping our skin better deal with the environment, and really a great nervous system properties too. But I think of this as like liquid sunlight in the winter.
So perhaps would help offset seasonal affective disorder.
Certainly, yes, very effectively. In fact, more effectively than pharmaceuticals in every clinical trial.
Wow.
Well, as or more, not more, but as or more, not less. So
I would vote for that plant.
yeah.
Might have to be a write-in ballot, but
Yes. Yeah, I'm curious if it might help the bees get through the winter.
I can't help but think that a diverse landscape of plants would help bees, which is my goal, to try to plant as many things here as they would be interested in. So while building soil. So we've got another plant there that is typically considered to be useless weed.
It's really beautiful if you,
And,
take a moment to stare at the flower without contempt. It is a beautiful flower.
yeah, and it happens to be a great honey plant. Sometimes its bloom extends into late July and early August when other plants are past, and it used to be a consistent honey producer, but it has not seemed to produce so much in recent years, and it grows on very poor soils sometimes, and also it can grow on good soil if it gets a toehold.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so I wish it well when I see it, even though most people do not.
Yeah, it is. It's a very strong plant, and I think it's a messenger of, when it moves into an area, that's a signal that the land there needs some healing or some of this, the medicine of this plant.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about that. Where some people with deep insight into botanical activity feel like a plant shows up on soil that needs what qualities that plant can bring, like the legumes bring nitrogen to the soil, and some deep-rooted plants like thistles and
Burdock.
mullein and burdock.
Mullein, yeah.
They have these tremendous taproots that go down into the subsoil where nutrients have been lost, and where the different soil pHs exist down, and where they can bring those nutrients to the surface that have been lost, those qualities. So I'm interested in hearing more about your past and in your childhood and your dedication. Obviously, you have a unusual relationship with plants. It's based on your own inner sensibilities more than many other people.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. When I was a child, I lived in a really rural area, so I spent a lot of time in the woods. But I remember as a child just dreaming and yearning for a teacher and wanting, this indigenous woman elder to come and show me the ways of the plants. And she didn't really show up, but the plants stepped in, and so it's been a plant-led journey. I've learned the most from just spending time with the plants, which I've done a fair bit of. But I would say the further down the journey I go, the less I want to know, and the more I just want to listen and accept that I really don't know. Because I find when I get all the facts and botanical names and things out of my head, I can much better experience a plant.
Well, yeah, and I can remember I spent a long time in the education pipeline, and I found out in a lot of cases when someone studying a certain subject learned the scientific name of that was the end. That was it. Now they could say the Latin name of something, but the learning ended there. Like unless they studied that specific thing, it was like you could speak with apparent authority about it, but you didn't really know any more about it hardly.
Yeah, well, I like to describe it as like these days, say like you make a friend, but all you do is research them on the internet, or stalk their Facebook page, and then you could think you know a lot about them, but I bet if you spent time with them in person, you would learn all sorts of other things.
Yeah, you would. Well, life is relationship after all, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and I would say my working with plants is first and foremost just relationship based. I've heard some cool stories of indigenous healers around the world that people have gone to learn from, and they know so much, but they don't know the names of any of the plants, or they don't know any of these, botanical, what family it's in, or sometimes don't even know the common name, but they know what to, how to use it, how to care for it, how to be in relationship with it.
So do you think our society in general is hungry for a relationship?
Yes, yeah, I
Human
think
society too?
definitely. I think most of the weird things that we do are an attempt to try to fill the void left by not living in tight communities.
Shall we not make a catalog of all the weird things we do?
Yeah. Oh, they're out there.
They're out there. Yeah. You can find them on Facebook, I
Yeah.
suppose. So, So, sounds like you've kind of found your niche, you found your way in life. Tell me a little bit about your business then, Bare Earth Herbals, and what you hope to accomplish. I mean, what you have kind of a value system that is behind your business, but also behind the way you relate with other people and other creatures on the
Yeah.
earth.
Well, having a business is hard for me, to be honest, because I don't really love capitalism or the construct of it. So I struggle with that a little. And also, I've had a lot of times coming up with the morality of selling things that I'm, making out of these plants, some of which I'm wild harvesting. And so I've really had to dig deep, and I found that the best way for me to give back to the plants is by speaking for them and educating whoever's willing to listen about them. And just really, I mean, more and more when I'm teaching classes now, it's less so about, this is good for that, and more so just here are the tools of developing your own relationship with the plants, and the honorable harvest, and like those are, I guess, the pillars of what I do. My motto for the business is to bring the medicine to the people and the people back to earth.
Yeah, nice. So, what allows a person to have a dedication like that? I mean, like you have one foot in society, and the other out of it, and following your own sensibilities. So, what do you think has allowed you? I mean, we've sort of covered that, but
Oh, I feel like brute determination. Probably I'm quite stubborn. I don't know.
oh, stubbornness
Yeah,
is
maybe because
is a positive
it's,
quality after all.
well, sometimes, yeah, it's been a challenge. It's been a real challenge. Like just yesterday, I was out in the Jordan River Valley all day, by myself, no other humans, barefoot, living basically like an animal, just walking around eating little things here and there. And then to get back in my van and drive away to the gas station and fill up, that was really hard for me. It was very hard. I'm not gonna lie. I wrote a song about it on my way home. It was so hard.
Maybe we should rephrase stubbornness and call it tenacity.
Yeah.
But that is so. There's you're sensitized to the natural order of things, especially to plants, and so living in a society that does not have those same understandings creates a certain amount of suffering for you. Sensitivity is suffering in a way.
In a way, yeah, it does. I'm not going to lie and say it's not uncomfortable, because it really is. And I encourage people to open up and become sentient to the world around us, not just humans, but the bees and the plants and the trees. But when we do that, we open ourselves to the pain of, the destruction and the pollution and the things that these beings are experiencing. And that can be really uncomfortable, and it can be hard to sit with that. And yet we're communal beings, so I've thought about going out and just living with the deer, but after about a week alone, things start to get kind of weird.
Well, Aldo Leopold said the ecologist lives alone in a world of wounds. I come back to that all the time, as like the more you know, the more painful the resolution of that knowledge becomes. Mm-hmm. If you take it to heart and you even look at your own life and realize you can be a vegetarian, but whatever, to try to have minimal impact on the ecological system, but every time you eat, something has to die.
Yes.
So to have a realistic view of who we are, and like we're like wild animals, that we've kind of civilized some of the things that we do, but we still have the same needs of all other creatures. We have to have a place to live and some food, and we need to protect it. We need the stingless bees never got any. Never able to amass any quantity of honey. So that somehow you, in your ability to cooperate with other people, you also have to be able to protect yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes harvesting can really be an act of reciprocity and, honor and caretaking for the land. A lot of studies have shown that when we sustainably and ethically harvest a plant population, it actually gets more prolific and increases the virility of it. So I think, the key is to do it with honor and gratitude and respect, and not shame and guilt, because there's nothing worse than harvesting something and then feeling really guilty about it.
It's true, but you have to go through a process, don't you, to have to learn to turn shame and guilt into an intelligent force then?
Yeah, I think it is basically comes down to, just recognizing that it's not about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way bigger than me, and, just a piece of it.
Right. So, how would you like to see society move? Like, what kind of society do you think can survive into the future with global warming and environmental damage and sociological issues and perhaps a breakdown due to disease like the COVID?
A society that eats weeds.
Pardon?
A society that eats weeds.
Eats weeds, yeah.
I mean, those are the plants that are thriving in this environment. I mean, that's what I think is, you look to the plants.
I like that, yeah.
And dandelion has no problem growing through pavement and disturbed soils and toxic places.
What are some common weeds that are like more nutritious than spinach? Is it pigweed or?
Oh yeah, amaranth and lamb's quarters both have something like 300% more of almost vitamins and minerals than kale. Yeah.
And they don't taste too bad either, do they?
No, they're good. Yeah. I last fall I harvested. Well, I was going to plant lettuce and kale and stuff in my garden, and I didn't get to it, so it all became lamb's quarters, which ended up being better because I harvested it and froze it just like I would, a green, and I ate it all winter. And in 1/2 cup of seeds of lamb's quarters is something like 200% of your daily calcium.
Wow. Got any with you?
No, there might be some around. That's the nice thing, it's everywhere.
Yeah. So we should ask our filmer, how are we doing for time?
We're at 35 minutes.
35 minutes. Well, what about your products? Talk about Bare Earth Herbals and how you're selling. You go to the farmers markets, and you have a mail order business. And
yeah. So we mostly make salve and tea. And a few other things. We've been infusing some of your honeys, as you know, and experimenting with that. But primarily salve and tea, and we do farmers markets in the summertime. Last winter we did an indoor one in Traverse City. Online sales, usually we vend at music festivals, but not this year, and other fairs and things. We sell to some stores too. We're trying to keep a really small business model to keep it sustainable. We really like to focus on using Michigan grown and wild harvested herbs, and so we're only able to grow as fast as our sources for those things can grow, and there's more and more demand for local herbs, but it's slow to grow. So a lot of like farmers that we've been working with, they're hesitant to take on an undertaking until there's a market. So honestly, I feel that the last 6 years that we've been doing this, we've been kind of creating a market for this in the general population, because the first year I did it, I had folks that had never even heard of lavender. So we've come a long ways, I would say, in 5 or 6 years, and thanks to some folks on TV that, like, Dr. Oz or whoever, every time there's a new episode of that. Everybody's on to the next big supplement or something. But my whole goal with our products is to make them, with the whole plant, still really relevant within the end product, so that people are able to develop a relationship with the plant through drinking the tea or using the salve. So that's why I really like to use fresh local plants and not too many of them in one formula, so it's, really able to bond with the plant.
Awesome. We should acknowledge your sister Summer, who is
Yes.
a devotee of the same principles as you, and
Yes,
you
yeah.
work together a lot.
She does most of the tea mixing and tea production. She does a lot of other things. She's an amazing sister and herb worker to
Colorful.
She is. She's funny. She's very fun. She puts up with all of my scatterbrained ideas everywhere and helps me
Bring them to
bring
earth.
them. Yes, exactly.
Because for plants, coming to earth is pretty important.
It is very important. It is stay rooted.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey that I didn't really foresee happening like this. When I started working with plants, it was started naturally, just being out and becoming interested and hearing that, yarrow was the first one I really heard that it had medicinal uses, maybe when I was 12 or so. And so I went out and harvested some, made some tincture and tea and infused oil, and fell in love with that, and then moved to Hawaii for some time. And
All right. So there's been some books that have been valuable to you, and I wonder if you'd be interested in recommending any of them.
Sure. Well, Braiding Sweetgrass is one of my all-time favorite books, and you were the one who gifted me that book to read. You were telling me for years, "Oh, have you read? I can't believe you haven't read it. You got to read it." And as soon as I read it, I knew exactly what you were talking about. It is a really wonderful braid of two worlds, like we were talking about, kind of trying to find that way to straddle both worlds, and it's a really beautiful testament to that.
Yeah. It seems like what struck me about it was written by like a preeminent scientist, a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
Who was also Native American,
Mm-hmm.
and also had a personal relationship with plants, like someone who maybe knew plants as you speak of them, not so much by the physical knowledge or the scientific information about them, but that it was very personal, and somehow it blended all of those things together.
Yes, yeah, and she's a wonderful storyteller too,
Yeah.
which is a real art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another book that is not so philosophical, but if in learning plants has been extremely helpful for me is it's called Botany in a Day, and it is plant family based. So it goes through each different plant family and gives a little overview of the family and then some members. And I found that to be really helpful with learning plants that I don't know about, because now I know the keys of the family, so I might be able to discover their edibility or medicinal uses just based on what family they're in.
Yeah, by identifying something that's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that book was easy to pick up too, then it's
Yeah. I think you can order it on, I think he has a website, the man who wrote it. Can't recall his name right, Thomas something or other. But yeah, honestly, with herb books, everybody's always asking, which ones I would recommend. And Rosemary Gladstar has some really wonderful beginner's herb books, but I honestly don't love reading about plants in books. I much prefer learning about them through spending time with them or through other people's experiences. So there are other people that teach about plants in Michigan, depending on what area you're in, but going out for a walk with somebody and and seeing the plant and its element and hearing about it from first person experience, that's the way it's always been done.
Yeah. Well, we're getting near the end of our session, and by the way, we must acknowledge the wonderful smell coming from these beehives.
Oh my gosh, I can smell it even through my mask.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the most delightful things about keeping bees is the smells that come from the hives. The gums that they gather from tree buds, and the smell of beeswax, pollen, and all these different floral sources that they're distilling in there.
Mm-hmm.
They set up little patterns inside with their wings. If you look at the bottom boards there, you'll see 100 bees lined up all in a row, fanning, forcing air into the hive, and then some pointed the other way, sucking it out. And inside there, they're causing it to travel inside all the combs in there. They're all lined up with their wings, making this air conditioning, drying, getting the moisture out of the nectar.
It's incredible.
Nobody's arguing about how to do it either.
Yeah, right. We could learn from them.
We could learn a lot from them. So I'm inviting you to respond to a little fiddle music. You think you're up for that?
Oh, I'm always up for that.
Okay. You could probably even take off your disguise.
Yeah.
So how about over in there where I can see? Because that's nice, because I want to turn sideways. And yeah. Margaret's Waltz. well, we just had a nice session, and the sound quality was greatly enhanced by a gift from our friend Don Brooks, who generously sent us all this IT equipment to allow us to capture much higher quality of sound, we assume. So thank you, Don. Thank you for your generosity, and I hope you could hear us. See you next week.